vegetables. So that's something that a problem that the consumers have. Consumers, we need to also question. Do we really want something that is perfectly round and beautiful, or we want something that is tasty? So I think that's one of the problems. And I think that there is alternatives in terms of what kind of pesticides or fertilizers can be used. I think that the problem is that the things that are more toxic are cheaper. So that's part of the problem.
I believe that when you done something a certain way for so long, change is very, very uncomfortable. And change takes a sacrifice. And when you don't consider the people that you are affecting, the lives that you are affecting, you don't feel as though you have to. If you know you're strong, you making millions, who are you to tell me that I got to change what it is that I'm doing that is bringing me much money? So I believe that they know that, it's a common ground, but who are you to make me change what I'm doing when if it's not broken, don't fix it? That's how they see, but it is broken. Because if it's affecting lives, it's broken, and your money shouldn't be as valuable as my life, my grandson's life, my kid's life. And that's something that they have to understand. Okay, if you change something, a system, if you change a system, yeah, there might be a sacrifice where you might have to pay a certain amount of money for to change this, or maybe you need to think about it and say, like for our campaign, maybe you don't go green harvest all together, but you green harvest around our homes, around our schools, around where we live at and we shop at, so that we don't be affected. And once you do that and you begin to make that change, eventually you'll continue to go out further and continue to green harvest and continue to green harvest everything. So you don't have to do it all at once, but you got to start somewhere if you know that this is affecting the people. Because at the end of the day, we're sacrificing our life by living there under those conditions. So why not you sacrifice a couple of dollars? Because sometimes we don't just go 6 months. We go a whole 8 months harvesting, and they brag about the millions of dollars that they make overage. So why that overage money can't go towards starting the system of green harvesting, so that it could start? I mean, we got cane patches around our elementary schools. I'm talking about cane patch, fence, school. I ain't talking about a mile. I'm talking about fence. So if the windows are open, our kids can see the fire outside of the gate. I'm talking about it being that close. Why not consider our lives and sacrifice whatever you need to sacrifice? You multi-million company. Why you can't sacrifice just around the neighborhood part? I mean, like, that's, common sense.
I wanna make like a really important point with something that she just said. So one of the biggest misconceptions of the environmental movement at the international level, but especially at the national level, is that when you talk about environmental regulation, we're immediately anti-business and anti-economic growth. And I think that this brings up a really important question, because when you're talking about economic growth, it's really what type of economic growth you're talking about. And a lot of these really severe threats and dangers are coming from multi-million dollar, sometimes even multi-billion dollar corporations. Yeah. So I'm going to give a very specific example. So last year a campaign was run against Burger King. Not through Oceana, this was through another organization, Mighty. And the campaign was run against Burger King because their soy and beef supplier was one of the biggest corporations responsible for deforestation in the Amazon rainforest in Latin America. And I don't know how much you guys know about soy and beef plantations, but basically you clear out a plot of land, you grow a beef or soy plantations in that plot of land, you're taking away the nutrients, so that plot of land can only be used for a couple of years. then they abandon the plot of land and they go and do a completely new plot of land, and then that plot of land is now abandoned, is not used for anything else for the rest of its history. And that is completely unnecessary. So when we're talking about economic development and environmental regulation, a lot of the time we're talking about just, for example, reintroducing nutrients into this plot of land that has already been used. So we're talking about a very small percentage of an international company's bottom line. So we're not talking about compromising your economic development. We're talking about just using smart solutions that are already very realistic. Just to not do just ridiculous, additional harm that's completely unnecessary. So it's really a two-part question, because we're not talking about a mom and pop bakery in the corner. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar industries. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to reiterate that I think we can all reject the premise that environmental protection and economic growth are at odds with each other. They're certainly not. But I think that I want to make the point that environmental protection, I guess let's put it this way, business, whether they like to recognize it or not, they need environmental protections as well. So whether it boils down to nutrients in soil or clean water that they're using to cool their power plant or whatever it might be, their environmental regulations do benefit business in some way, shape, or form. And I think that maybe it requires some sort of paradigm shift in the way that we are framing this discussion, and whether or not those protections are just for the folks that live in the business community or live in the community where the business happens to be operating, or whether they're there for both sides, because truly they are there for both sides. If you look at the formation and the frameworks of all of our environmental laws, or our main ones anyway, you'll see that they were made through stakeholder panels and discussions with the business community and like the local community living in the area, and that time and time again they went forward until finally air criteria standards were developed with scientists and business community folks and all different types of people at the table. So I think that's important perspective to keep in mind when we do get some backlash from businesses, is that, hey, you were involved in this process too. And this is not entirely one-sided. We have found a common balance, and I think that's an important discussion point as you do talk about the balance between economy and the environment.
The last thing I wanted to mention on that your question was that when you cost and money is a really funny thing, particularly profit. Because there's a lot of costs that we don't quantify in dollar amounts when we think about environmental protections. For example, in the U.S., it is extremely expensive to take care of someone who has asthma, because it's a lifelong disease. It's extremely expensive to do to treat someone for cancer, extremely expensive. And a lot of these things, just because I studied health, it falls on you as a taxpayer, just because of the way our system's set up. Even though I'm good at it, but I think it's helpful not to think only from the business and their small profit margin loss, or even if they can recoup it, but also the societal cost and how many millions of dollars you're spending on something that could be completely prevented, just to save a CEO just a little bit of money when they make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times more than their average worker. So I think that's a helpful framework when you think about these things.
I wanted to interject back on the subject of sugar. We need to challenge the very existence of sugar agriculture south of Lake Okeechobee. They only came into existence with the rise of the Castro regime in Cuba, and the State Department wanted to thwart sugar production in Cuba by offering cheap U.S. alternatives, sugar beets and cane. So they are being heavily subsidized. It continues to this day. To remove those subsidies, they will no longer be a viable industry. And as a gentleman in the middle pointed out about Brazil, they completely dwarf all other sugar production in the world. The sugar production south of the lake is not necessary to the world market.
More questions from the audience? All right. Well, so one of the things that's definitely been touched on in regards to the last question is power dynamics, right? And so we have these communities that we've talked about that are typically low-income minority communities, so folks are working multiple jobs, they're taking care of families, they're multi-generational households, right? They've got a lot going on, and sometimes these issues are not what they have the time to focus on, as well as we have these power dynamics where we have industry in the community employing folks or just intimidating folks or whatever it might be. So a question to the panelists would be, what has been successful? What has been a successful tactic in getting communities engaged? So we've talked about going door to door, we've talked about obviously the emphasis on voting, but what are some other really concrete ways that communities can either get engaged through your organizations or just get engaged on their own that are easier, let's say, than going to city meetings that start at 9 a.m. and don't end until 2 a.m.?
Can you raise your hand if you have a phone? Oh my gosh, you guys all have the opportunity to get engaged. Congratulations. Seriously, that's what it boils down to. You have a phone and you have the ability to pick up the phone and make a call. You have the ability to send a text message. I mean, you can literally tweet your representatives if you haven't been following the news. I think that's really a really easy way to get engaged. You can sign online petitions through your phone or your computer. I know that this campus has a lot of free computers to use, and there are libraries all over the county that you can access internet for free. Signing online petitions, sending letters, calling people. I'm the kind of person that if I'm stuck in traffic, I will call my representative. And I'll just have a chat with them or their aide about an issue that I really care about. And I challenge you guys to do that too. Nobody wants to be stuck in traffic anyway. You're not supposed to be texting, so you might as well call your representative. And I think it's a really easy low bar. If you have a phone, you really don't have an excuse to get engaged in the issues. And there's plenty of information online. I know everybody here has social media accounts, and you can follow issues and stay up to date. A lot of our organizations even have, you can get text alerts if you want, you can get email alerts about what's going on, and it's a really good way to stay engaged and involved.
As they say, there's an app for that. It's called Capital Call.
There you go.
You set it up with your local representatives or anyone that you want to text or call, and the phone number's in there. You just tap their name and you make your opinion known.
I would say one thing we talked about going door to door. In the community that I work in, many of the community members don't have cell phones, they don't have internet, and some of them don't have running water. So it's a different, going door to door is almost essential for us, and sending letters. It's part of what we do. So I would say the most powerful thing that I've seen happen is really encouraging and inspiring community members to organize, right? And to build somewhat of a system for communication. So when meetings are going on and things are happening in the news and things are happening in city council that are huge, that city members necessarily don't have to come, but they're aware. And if they can come, they show up. So I think it's not only technology is so powerful, but if that's not available to you, there's still no excuse, right? Because we can talk to one another, we can show up at each other's door, and we can tell people, and whether it's through letters or just having a conversation with someone, I think having the community really stand up for themselves and fight and have a voice, and giving them that opportunity to conduct their own meetings and contact each other is vital. But just giving them that opportunity, or showing them that they can, and when they do have a voice, it's very powerful.
That was something that I wanted to say about having a voice. Having a voice is very, very powerful, and a lot of times people will change your voice into trying to manipulate it as if like you're against something or you're being that you are the enemy of, and that's not the case at all. Just because you have a voice, you having a voice to fight for what's right, not to close down a company or not to come up against them or to stop their money. None of that type of stuff, that's not the case. You having a voice because you see injustice. If we look at these kids that went to Tallahassee, prime example of all of you young people, you all have a voice. And we can't look at this and just say, oh, well, I'm not affected by it. Yes, you are. You're affected by everything that we're talking about up here today. Everything. You don't have to get paid. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't make one dime for getting up here and having a voice. I'm doing it because it's what's right. It's what's right. When you see something wrong and you're passionate about it, you speak up about it. Because it affects me, it affects my family, it affects my neighborhood, and it's been going on for generation after generation after generation. Who in your bloodline, in your generation, is going to stand up and say enough is enough? I mean, like, no, I don't have no money, I don't have no lawyers, I can't do but so much, but what I can do and what I do hold a lot of value in is this here, my mouth, and I'm going to speak up. And I mean, like, yeah, I've been in, people try to intimidate me and say I shouldn't be quiet, and I shouldn't do this, and I shouldn't do that for so many different reasons or whatever. But wrong is wrong. I have absolutely nothing against the sugar mill companies. Absolutely nothing against them. But what is right, and what is wrong, and you don't wait until someone in your family get affected by something and then want to stand up. No, you do it because you know that it's right and you need to stand for something.